Now, let's have a look at the story we've been talking about as well in the last hour. The woman arrested after attempting to take her 97-year-old mother out of a care home for lockdown. Qualified nurse Ylenia Angeli, who's 73, wanted to care for her mother, who has dementia, at home. But when she told staff at the care home, they called the police, who then briefly arrested her. Have a listen.
So let's just make this very clear. My nan, my 97-year-old nan here, who we have taken from the care home because we haven't seen her for 9 months, is now being taken back by force to her care home. My mother has been arrested. My mother is in the back of the car here. She is a nurse. She is a fully qualified nurse who is wishing to care for her own mother. And here we have an incredible use of police time to take my 97-year-old grandmother back into a care home where she is deteriorating, where we haven't been able to see her for 9 months. Nan, I love you and we are going to fight for you.
There it is. It's distressing to hear and to watch. The video was recorded by Ylenia's daughter, Leandra Ashton, and it shows Ylenia being handcuffed inside a patrol car while her elderly mother sat in the front of the family car. Let's speak to them both now. Good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Nice to have you with us. Ylenia, tell us first of all then, what were the circumstances behind this? Because that's where I think perhaps we haven't heard so much of the story. What happened for you to want to take your mum from the care home to begin with?
I think I was shocked at the deterioration that I saw. It was a window visit, and my daughter was with me, and I heard her visit. I heard her sort of gasp and say, "Oh, Nan," and I was feeling the same. I thought, "Oh my God," and I think it was that she looked desolate. My mother, she looked forlorn. She was trying to reach us through the window, and it just seemed so wrong. I just wanted to put my arms around her and hold her and tell her I love her very much. And it wasn't planned. It was, I think, emotions were running very high, and
I think this is what happens when you've been trying to go through all the official channels in the correct way, and your voice is silenced, and you're not heard, and you're not listened to. I have written countless emails. I've tried to go through every official channel, and it's like some horrible nightmare of bureaucracy where our opinion is just not listened to.
So, Leandra, were you trying to go through those channels then in order to see your gran or to get her out?
Yeah, initially we just wanted to see her. We thought, okay, my mum volunteered free her services in the care home, either as a nurse. They don't have any nurses there. It's just a care home. She volunteered her services in the laundry, in the kitchen, anything. So she'd be able to go in and see my nan every day, which is what she was doing before lockdown, and feeding her. Because when you have a patient who has dementia, it can take up to 2 hours to feed them one meal. And nothing against the care home staff, but they don't have that amount of time to spend on one patient. So this is what we found so distressing. And for the first, I'd say 3 to 4 weeks of lockdown, my mum's mental health deteriorated, knowing that her mother wasn't getting the level of care that she really needed. And we raised safeguarding issues, and those safeguarding issues have been dropped and have disappeared, because within the first month or so of lockdown, we could see that she was deteriorating and not getting the amount of fluid she needed.
And Ylenia, you obviously, so impromptu decision then, really. Look, it was that moment of high on emotion and distress, and thinking, you just can't stay here. You're coming with me.
Yeah, it was too much to bear. I think 9 months is an awfully long time. And I say we have tried all the correct channels. We've played it by the book, umpteen phone calls, spoken to so many people, and no one is listening. No one's listening. And we want to be a voice for every single person, for all the families out there who are suffering, because they are really suffering. My daughter and I are on a group called Rights for Residents. We've been swamped with calls, similar sort of things that have happened, where families have had meltdowns in car parks because they're so distressed. You've probably seen images of elderly literally trying to claw their way out of the home at the window. And it's just not good enough. It's inhumane. It's got to stop. And I think fear is the worst virus at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not COVID.
And Leandra, just tell us then what happened next. So you leave the care home, your mum leaves the care home with your nan. You made your way to a garden centre, I understand, and then to coin a phrase, all hell broke loose.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know what to do. We weren't sure whether we were going to get arrested. We were in separate cars, and we just thought, let's just pause and just try and catch our breath here. We knew that the police had been called. You know, we did not want to be on the run with my 97-year-old nan. We were trying to get some legal advice, and then the police turned up, and then the rest is kind of on the video, really.
Yeah, and the point of arresting you, Ylenia, what happened there? There was a talk of an assault or something. Is that true? What's the story here?
Yeah, that is correct. There wasn't an assault as such, but I mean that's what they were trying to class it as.
Who had supposedly assaulted who?
I had supposedly assaulted the person who opened the door with a bunch of yellow roses. I had a bunch of yellow roses for my mother, and when the door opened slightly for me to pass the roses through, I snapped, and I thought I have to hold my mother. She was right like a few feet away from me, and I thought I just want to put my arms around her. So I suppose I pushed my way in, but I was pushed very strongly back out. I did manage to get in. So the assault was with a bunch of roses. Yeah.
What was the? I mean, one of the many things that distinguishes our police service from other countries is that they don't always use handcuffs. I mean, often only used in quite extreme circumstances. Was there any reason given that you were put into handcuffs? I mean, that seems by anybody's standards.
Yeah, because I was refusing to let my mother go back to the home. I was standing outside my car, saying, "I'm sorry, but she's not going back. I'm going to care for her." And I think they had no other option but to handcuff me because they could see that I was very serious about this.
Wow.
And I think the bigger question here as well is that there are rules in place that are purporting to protect people, and they're quite simply not. You know, this whole narrative of staying safe, we need to radically challenge, because is it about saving lives, or is it about actually allowing people at the end of their lives a quality of life? That's what the narrative needs to be about. It needs to be a much broader perspective of public health, not just the focus on one virus.
Yeah, and I guess, Ylenia, that is the point here, isn't it? You know, your mum is clearly frail. She has dementia, and she is in the winter of her life, and and here we go with lockdown number 2. I assume your fear is that you might not see her again.
I will fight to see her. I will fight to my last breath for my mother and for all the people in similar situations, for the elderly throughout the nation. We have to stand up. This can't go on.
And I think it's also worth pointing out that Alzheimer's is still the #1 killer in our country.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yes.
It's there on the Office of National Statistics. We can see that is the #1 killer.
And Leandra, was your nan aware of what was going on? I mean, what is her condition? Was she able to grasp the situation she was in?
Yeah, I mean, when she saw us, once we got hold of her, she was very animated, and she smiled, and she was giving us kisses, and she was speaking a little bit in Italian, and she was trying to kind of joke with us in the way that she only can now without real language. But yeah, I mean, my nan has always been incredibly resilient. She faced Mussolini in the Second World War. You know, she has been a fighter her whole life, and she's proving that again now. She is still fighting, and she took it all incredibly in her stride. I think she just enjoyed the fact that there was such a different scene in front of her compared to what she's had for so many months.
Yeah.
I think she was really, really pleased to see us. She couldn't stop kissing us.
Wow.
And it was really it was really moving and
very difficult to then hand her back.
Yeah, I'm sure that was distressing. And Ylenia, you were de-arrested, so you have no criminal record as a result of this. Were you given any advice from the police about not returning to the care home? What's the status now with this story?
Oh, well, they did say, if I did this again, I would be arrested and jailed. I actually did say I will try this again and I will be jailed.
So if you tried to see your mother, you would be jailed?
Yeah. If I tried to, yes, absolutely.
Well, I mean, obviously the route that we're wanting to go down is hopefully through the amount of support we've had from the media and the public, hopefully a bit of legal support. We'll be able to get an emergency power of attorney in place so that we can take her out.
So just explain, if you could, Leandra, just explain, how does that work? Because I understand you have, as a family, you have power over your grandmother's finances, but not her well-being. Is that something that's deferred then to the care home somebody is put into? How does that work?
So what happens if a power of attorney isn't in place? And again, this is something that people don't know about and people need to be aware of. If a relative loses their mind, for want of a better expression, then the power of attorney isn't in place. So any decisions for that person's well-being then has to be taken between half the family and half the local authority. All points of view have to be taken into account. But currently, it feels like our point of view is being completely dismissed and ignored.
So you do have a say in this. It's not the full say, but
apparently so. It certainly doesn't feel like that at the moment.
And I understand even on a visit to hospital, you were not even informed she was being taken back to the care home after the trip to hospital.
That's right. Yeah. So she became ill in the care home, and she had a few days in hospital. And the hospital staff were really happy for us to be there and to feed her, because they could see immediately this is in her best interest. We don't have time to feed her. It takes 2 hours to feed her. Yeah. And that's quite normal with a dementia patient. And we were asking at that point, okay, talking to the hospital, we're going to bring her home, we're going to change things around, going through all the official channels. And my grandmother was discharged from the hospital without anyone notifying us. I mean, it's straight back to the home. And it was beyond heartbreaking. Yeah. And it was at that point I thought, this system is broken. It doesn't work anymore.
So would it be fair to say, Ylenia, that you thought to begin with that this was the best place for your mum under all the circumstances? You've described some of the difficulties of a dementia patient and eating and things like that. But on further investigation and your experience over the last almost a year, you decided that it wasn't the best place and she should be back with you guys.
When I could see her every day and I would go in for several hours, it was tolerable. I just live five minutes away from the home. I've actually moved from the Shetland Isles down to the East Riding of Yorkshire to be here for my mother, to be for, I lost my...
No, it's okay. So yeah, so my mum now is in a position. She was in a position where she was able to care for my nan, but now with lockdown. But then with lockdown happening, then that stopped. So then the level of care just wasn't. She has very high needs, my nan, and to be honest, no care home that we've found so far can really meet those needs. It needs to have a family member in there who is really looking out for her and supporting her.
Which happens to a lot of families within this care home setting. Yeah. I think care homes have quite a support network with families, but that's all been taken away. So now the carers are under more stress. They're short-staffed. They receive minimum wages for doing a job that really requires a great deal of skill. They should be honoured for doing what they do and not given such a miserable wage.
Do you regret what you did? I mean, there are people, despite everybody understanding this. Mitch just sent us a text saying, what would have been the consequences if one of you had tested positive for COVID-19 or something like that? If some other relative of a resident decided to do the same thing and they were positive, then that could end up as a very different story than the one we're talking about today.
I think the level of risk was very low. The door was wide open. We were right by the front door, and I think that this is what happens when the rules are irrational. Then you start acting in an irrational way. But I believe that the level of risk was very low. And unfortunately, what we believe will be happening now is that my nan will be isolated. She'll be in a room on her own, which is the last thing we wanted. So if we were able to take her out, that wouldn't have been the case.
Indeed. Well, listen, thank you, both of you, for speaking with us and explaining a difficult story so well. There's been an awful lot of interest and a lot of support as well, and complete understanding, an unconventional story as it is. Ylenia Angeli and Leandra Ashton, that's the daughter and the granddaughter of 93-year-old Tina Thornborough, who was taken by her own daughter from a care home and found herself in a pair of police handcuffs and under arrest. It doesn't matter where you stand on the wider issue of lockdown and what it's all about and the reasons, but that just gives you a kind of an encapsulated, crystallized idea of the kind of upside down, Alice in Wonderland, topsy-turvy, utterly mad world we found ourselves in.